There are a ton of watches that get a lot of hype, tons of attention, and heaps of praise. Sometimes it's entirely justified because they've stood the test of time. Other times, though, these watches end up being a little bit overrated. Maybe not in every single way, but in some meaningful ways. That's the focus for today. A deep dive into some watches that in some ways are overrated, why, and what better alternatives could be. Let's dive in. Wouldn't be a self-respecting YouTube channel without saying something controversial. The base Rolex Submariner in steel with a date window is overrated. Now, before you go mental on me, let's just acknowledge the importance of Rolex and the Submariner. The Rolex Submariner was one of the very first true diver watches that really caught on. The design, which has evolved since 1954, is iconic. Sean Connery as James Bond wore a Rolex Submariner in the movie Dr. No. Jacques Cousteau, the legendary French diver, also rocked a Rolex. On top of that, Rolex is without a shadow of a doubt the pinnacle of luxury mass-produced watches. Are Rolex also probably so good at making this watch that the profit they make on those watches is massive? Absolutely. But that's not what makes it overrated, because the fact is, if you buy it today, this is one of a very small number of watches in the world which will be worth the same or more the next day, the next week, the next month, or the year after you bought it. I understand why this watch is so popular. In the higher earning business circles, this is the watch you will see most often after an Apple Watch, a Garmin, and a Sunto. But that's the problem. You want something special. I understand that. You might even want a Rolex. I understand that. You want something sportier than a Datejust. I understand completely. But at the end of the day, this is top 3 of the plainest, least interesting watches in the Rolex lineup. Despite its history, it's a plain black diver. You can get a Tudor Black Bay 41. It looks more premium on a Jubilee than the Submariner. The Omega Seamaster 300M in black is more characteristic, and because of the Cindy Crawford mole, has far more personality. Christopher Ward have a decent black diver. Rado have a decent black diver. Certina, a lot cheaper, but decent black divers. So do Longines, Seiko, Formex. Blancpain also have one that's pretty good. Breitling with a Super Ocean Heritage. Really nice watch, by the way, especially in the new update. I can't say for certain that this is the most common mechanical watch design in the world, but it's definitely up there. I have some colleagues who own this watch who are going to kill me if they watch this video. There's nothing wrong with this watch, guys. For all its qualities, this watch, just in my view, the Rolex model this is the model that gives you the least of what Rolex really delivers. So what's a better option? Now, you're probably thinking something cheaper with a black dial or a black bezel, and sure, you can get that. That's not the point. I know this will cost you more, but get a two-tone Submariner or a Sea Dweller. I'm deadly serious. The two-tone black and gold Submariner isn't overly flashy, but it brings just a little bit more personality to the table. And the Sea Dweller is just that bit more toolish and more distinctive. And it's just that more real. And it's just, to me, feels like the better choice. Both do something that the base sub doesn't do. You either go for the stronger statement, which is still restrained in two-tone, or you go for the more capable, more tool-forward diver. They are the less safe choice, but they are the direction I'd go. To me, there's so much more intent to buying those watches that the sub just doesn't quite convey. Next up, Christopher Ward Loco, $5,000. This is a phenomenal watch, and it's one of those watches where you get a lot for your money. When you dive into the details of this watch in terms of the manufacturing that goes into it, you literally will be astounded by what you're getting. It's an in-house movement. It's a unique balance wheel. It's a 134, isn't it? 130 hours of power reserve, give or take. Near cost level accuracy. It's brushed, it's polished, it's faceted. It's so easy these days to say, no big deal. Anybody can do that. And it's not hard, but it really, really is. And it has to be respected. But unless you are an ardent collector and a real enthusiast, a person that has multiple watches that you rotate between, then don't get it. Get a regular 12. It's slimmer, it's cheaper, it's going to be easier to service, and it's going to be significantly more versatile. The Loco is a halo product, and it's the right watch for the right kind of enthusiast. But for a lot of regular watch buyers who either only have one watch, or even people with multiple watches but still a limited budget, this is a watch that just isn't the right option. This is a watch that just won't get the wear time that its price demands. So admire it, appreciate it, and then get a regular 12 or a titanium model if you want a little bit more pizzazz. Now, if you're new here and you've made it this far, hopefully you're not thinking this channel is overrated. So subscribe and click that notification bell so you know when I put out a new video. Thanks.
I just love the way it feels when everybody thinks I own a Porsche.
And people would think you own a Porsche because you're wearing the clothes?
Of course. Only an idiot would wear this stuff if you didn't have the car.
Don't be like Joey. Don't get the merch. Don't get the Porsche jacket. Don't buy the cap. Don't get the keychain. Don't get the belt. Don't get the wall clock. Don't get the sunglasses. They are made by Luxottica anyway, probably. The only thing you should buy from Porsche is their cars. End of story. Porsche design watches are not the ones you should buy. They're not bad watches. There's typically a modified or upgraded movement inside. There's often cost certification. Some of the designs are appealing. But Porsche, I believe, should entirely stick to cars. Getting the watch, the toaster, or the water boiler are not what you should buy with Porsche design branding. If you want something car related, there are so many options. Notable examples, Breitling Top Time chronographs, which I think are phenomenal. To me, they're the best of the Breitling bunch at the moment. If Breitling isn't your jam, Tag Heuer have you covered with the iconic Monaco and the less extreme but still fabulous glassbox models. If those models are too expensive, go for Autodromo, Hanhart. There are so many excellent designs. And I know Porsche Design is a studio that is recognized for their design credentials outside of cars. But when it comes to watches, I think they're overrated. If I bash Rolex a little, I also have to bash Grand Seiko a little. There needs to be an equilibrium in the universe. But before I do that, I have to give Grand Seiko some love. At retail, you get a lot for your money. In a time where everybody else has just pumped up prices, Grand Seiko have been more restrained. When you get close to Grand Seiko, you also see what it is that Grand Seiko are all about. Take that magnifying glass, the loupe, or the macro lens and look at a Grand Seiko case up close. This is the crispest beveling out there. Plots are machined with razor-sharp precision. The polish is distortion-free. The sweep of the hand is 36,000 vibrations per hour. And the dials, at this point, the dials are next level. These are amazing watches, and Grand Seiko have a level of refinement that few other watches achieve. But their strength is also their weakness. Because in all honesty, Grand Seiko is, and I love this term, I'm overusing it, but I'm use it anyway, a cork-sniffing brand. The problem with the Grand Seiko is that the refinement and restraint that they have is often just a little bit disappointing. The Shunbun pink that looks so perfectly pink on paper is just a little too understated in reality for a lot of people. Those dials are great, but it's under a magnifying glass that you see it. On a day-to-day, it's often just a little bit hard to appreciate. And Zaratsu is also incredibly hard to appreciate. It's up there with the people that believe they can taste whether or not a particular winemaker has a cat on the farm that every now and again pees near the grapes. Also, I've never, understood the point of off-center power reserve on some models. And why does the SBGM 221 not have the 5 Hz movement? You can get it in the SBGJ 249, but the dials just isn't as legible. The tentographs are technical marvels, but they're too big. Grand Seiko is exceptional, but this combination of extreme restraint and sometimes what I feel is glaring oversights leads to a lot of their watches being overrated. For all their hype, I just know too many people that don't feel they deliver in reality. And you are free to call me a pleb that just hasn't learned to appreciate the refinement of a Grand Seiko, but it is where I stand. Of course, just an opinion, but stand by it. I do love their watches, but they do sometimes just get pushed a little bit too hard sometimes. There is one specific Grand Seiko, though, that I feel is not overrated, and it's because it doesn't have any of the glaring flaws, and importantly, it's a watch that in its core design is designed to be restrained from the beginning. Where the Shunbuns and the white birches and sports watches aren't quite sporty enough, the SLGW003 is just an almost perfect interpretation of a dress watch. The dial is special, but because it's a dress watch, the understatedness works. Everything is pristine, and because it's on a leather strap, there's not a subpar bracelet to disappoint you. It's titanium, but not in the Tudor grey or Omega Grade 2 grey that we all know. This is titanium with a shine and a luster like I can't think of other titaniums like it. To me, it's the best of the current not masterpiece grain Seikos, and one of the few that is entirely rated as it should be. To this day, I will go to my grave and say the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore is overrated. Some people will say it's actually not rated at all, but the reality is the Offshore as a line is still relatively popular. It was originally conceived as a sportier, more outdoorsy, more statement-forward version of the regular Royal Oak. It's bigger, it's more noticeable, and there's even a classic Arnold Schwarzenegger version. I'm not sure if it's the quintessential first ever baller watch, but it could be close. They had a full gold model on a gold bracelet that weighed something like 350 grams. This is a statement watch for sure, but most of them wear really badly due to a combination of thickness and the height and the extra lug width that is generated by angling of the lugs and the inflexibility of both the straps and the bracelet models. I would any day of the week suggest a Zenith Defy Extreme Diver. It costs less. It's also ridiculously thick. And I repeat, do not ever put the thing on a NATO strap. It's going to float somewhere between 1 and 3 meters over your wrist. But on the bracelet or rubber strap, it's just a million times better wearing and far more interesting as a watch. It's not cheap. They're making a bucket load on a watch like this, but it wears better than most Royal Oaks because they've put more thought into the case size and the angle of the legs. The Moonswash wasn't overrated when it came out. The idea to take the iconic Speedy Professional and make an accessible entry-level fun watch was brilliant. The design obviously worked. The color options gave you something that you basically never before had consistently in the Speedy Professional, and people went mental for it, for good reason. But now, today, what made it special is more or less gone. Part of the specialness of this watch was the fact that it was new and a novel idea. It was this novelty that rated the watch. But as the novelty has worn off, the watch has become more and more overrated. Every new release with a moonshine gold hand or some little detail just doesn't have the punch it had initially. This horse is dead and has been beaten more than enough. Enjoy the one you have, but if you don't have one, the hype that made it special just isn't really there anymore. Get a Mr. Jones, they're way more fun. Speedmaster, great watch, iconic watch, historically significant watch, popular watch. The Omega Speedmaster Professional is all of those things. I love it, I own it, it's a great watch. It's one of the few watches where the discussion of no display or display case back is actually one that does not have a definitive answer, because if you want the real Speedy, you get it without, and with Heslite crystal, or you get it with the display case back, and then you lose the Heslite, but you get to see a really good looking manual wind movement. Where a lot of watch nerds will try and talk you out of a Submariner, they will try and talk you into a Moonwatch. And for a lot of people, they just glaze over and don't get it. And I understand why. It's just a black dial, black bezel, fairly restrained chronograph. If an enthusiast were to describe the significance of this watch to a person that had never seen it before, I honestly think after hearing the story and seeing it, a majority would be like, what? That watch? Oh, okay, I mean, it's nice, I suppose. The fact is, for a lot of people, a 2-counter model from Omega is a better looking and more interesting option without being sort of out there in terms of designs. The 43mm chronoscopes are just mad good. Although, if you've watched my videos, you know I personally stick with the Speedy, also because I'm a slave to branding. I admit it blindly. I'll also plug a glass box from Tag. For a lot of people, it's just more character in those kinds of watches, and as opposed to the Speedy, are totally underrated by a lot of consumers. Tudor Black Bay Pro. Great watch, great price, a little bit thick. Yes, as a YouTuber, I am actually under contract to state that the Black Bay Pro is a little bit thick. If I don't, the algorithm punishes me. But honestly, for all the love this watch gets, it's just a relatively decent outdoor GMT. I do think that for all its strengths, this is one of the Tudors where people just get caught up in the phase of everything Tudor does is great hype. It's good, it's really good, but it's just not hype good. The Longines Spirit Time wears better, and personally I think it looks better. It's on a highly comparable level quality-wise to a degree where most people, I don't think, can tell the difference. It's also cheaper. There are a lot of options out there that rate just as highly, or are as good, but are not rated as highly. If you've forgotten, I'll just repeat it. Overrated doesn't mean bad. It means that for all the watch gets talked about, it might not be that much better than the other options out there. And one of the watches I own is a Doxa Sub 300T. Jacques Cousteau connection again. Real dive watch, lots of history, no fancy smancy ceramic, big, chunky old watch, practical. It's a true tool watch with tool watch robustness. It's well built and is one of those true beta watches that there are fewer and fewer versions of these days in a world where everything is going premium. But it is an acquired taste. It's a chunky watch for a lot of people, regardless of whether you choose the 300 or 300T. I think a lot of people end up being disappointed when they finally get to try it out on the wrist. If I were to suggest something, which I am, because that's kind of the premise of the video, then it's a Squale. Whether it's the 2001 or a restrained 1521, these are priced more or less the same as a Doxa. The movements inside are comparable, if not identical in some cases. And for all the time somebody mentions Doxa, few people ever mention Squale. The 2001 is on my own current shortlist. Will it make it into my collection alongside the Doxa? Maybe. No doubt, though, that it's underrated relative to Doxa as a brand. I'm kind of realizing that I've mentioned Squale quite a few times recently. Might be time for me to start introducing a talking dinosaur to my videos. Let me know in the comments if you think that's a good idea. Tissot PRX. As always, there's a context to the statement that I'm going to make, so wait for it. A watch that I feel is overrated is the Tissot PRX. And the watch that I suggest as an alternative is the Tissot PRX. The Tissot PRX has been a massive hit for Tissot. It's their integrated sports watch, and we all know that Rolex saw the Tissot PRX and decided to copy it verbatim. Those of you who think Rolex looked in their old catalog to oyster quartzes and Texanas are so very clearly wrong. This is a shameful theft of the PRX. I think it's a fabulous watch that has made integrated bracelet watches accessible to a lot more people than the lucky few that can afford a Nautilus and a Land Dweller. But I do feel the mechanical model is the overrated model. Tissot do what a lot of Swatch brands do. They offer a quartz version and a mechanical model. And on the mechanical model, you get some nicer dials, but you pay a not insignificant premium for that dial and a relatively unexciting but standard low-grade Powermatic 80 movement. Could this watch last a lifetime? Yes, potentially. But realistically, most owners will buy it, and 5-10 years later, when the movement gives out, they'll go out, buy a new watch. The fact is, it's relatively speaking too cheap to repair compared to just getting a new watch in 5-10 years' time. Get the quartz model. There's nothing wrong with quartz. At this price point, it's likely more reliable and has better long-term durability. If you're not in love with one of the waffle dials on the mechanical models, then get the quartz. That's it for this time around. 10 watches that are really, really good, but just a tad overrated, at least according to me, which is just my opinion. You're allowed to have yours as well. Share your thoughts and opinions in the comments. What are overrated watches to you? Like, subscribe. Cheers.